fatal road accidents. And they're concerned that the heavy flow of traffic will prevent them from getting help in time to those in need.
In terms of the law, emergency vehicles have the right of way because they need to get to an accident scene. They need to be able to load people up to take them to hospital. So it sometimes gets to a life and death situation. So motorists must heed right of way to whether it is an ambulance or whether it is a police car or whether it is a fire engine. They must heed right of way for the emergency vehicles to pass. If they don't pass, there is a heavy penalty that can be imposed on them.
Motorists can expect roadblocks and spot checks. There will be steep fines for speedsters and drunk, reckless and negligent drivers, or worse yet, a festive season behind bars. Traffic authorities are urging motorists travelling long distances this festive season to take a break at least once every 2 hours, just to rest and freshen up before getting back on the road. Belinda Moses, E-News, Johannesburg.
A family is in mourning tonight after a microlight pilot was killed in an air crash. His aircraft ploughed into the ground shortly after takeoff near Cape Town. The cause of the crash is still being investigated, but experienced pilots at the scene believe it is due to human error.
Ian Williams was on his way back to Fisantekraal airfield when he crashed. He'd flown over the northern suburbs to the Coburg Flight Centre to visit fellow pilots. Williams was about 46 meters above the ground when he decelerated and started to turn left. But the Bush Baby microlight stalled and plunged to the ground.
The scene was horrific. The aeroplane obviously hit the ground at quite high speed, probably around about 60 miles an hour, I would say, at least. The whole front of the aeroplane is wiped out, and the tail section, and the pilot was very, very badly injured. I did go over to check and there were no vital signs. So it's quite obvious he died, thankfully, on impact.
The Civil Aviation Authority is investigating the cause of the crash, but experienced pilots who saw the accident believe it was due to human error rather than mechanical fault.
There's nothing wrong with the plane as far as we knew. Everything was running fine. We were under the impression he was going to try and turn and come back and do a fly past, which my view is that doing a fly past low level downwind is not the wisest thing to do.
The 50-year-old flight instructor leaves behind his wife and 2 children. Robin Smith, E-News, Cape Town.
2 British tourists are recovering in hospital after they were stabbed and robbed on Table Mountain yesterday. 2 men armed with knives stole the couple's camera, bank cards and cash. Police have arrested one of the suspects. The other is still on the run. But the incident hasn't stopped throngs of tourists from visiting the Cape Town landmark.
One of the world's greatest tourist attractions is increasingly becoming the scene of violent crime. This latest incident came the same day authorities announced extra security measures on the mountain and imposed a curfew on singles and couples visiting after 10 p.m. But fortunately for the mother city, tourism doesn't appear to have been affected by the recent spate of attacks. The attack on the British couple's done little to deter other tourists from going up the mountain. By lunchtime, more than 200 hikers had hit this trail, most of them saying they weren't worried about their safety.
On my way down, I actually found one of the crime sort of protecting guys with a radio. So it looks like they've looked after it.
In my view, it is safe.
We'd only been thinking about fitness levels and sunscreen.
Nothing to be robbed, no. Nothing to. In fact, we're from Zimbabwe, we'll rob them because we don't have a lot.
The British couple was airlifted to hospital where they remain in a stable condition. It's not clear yet whether they plan to return home immediately or stay in South Africa for the rest of their holiday. Amy Brooke, E-News, Cape Town.
South Africans are shopping up a storm ahead of Christmas. The Reserve Bank's warned that they may be fueling inflation, but this hasn't stopped the last-minute spending frenzy.
For many shoppers, inflation is the last thing on their minds. They're more worried about losing the festive spirit in the mad rush to the tills. It starts with a desperate search for parking, then an exhausting trek from one store to another, and the wait in long queues. But no sign of cutting back on spending, despite 4 interest rate hikes since June. Not even the exasperation and frustration of last-minute shopping is denting the spending spree, and retailers are doing a roaring trade.
We've had over 100,000 people a day for the last week, since last week Friday. Today we'll peak at about 125,000. Tomorrow, probably close to about 120,000 people per day.
And who worries about debt when you're up against festive chaos that's turning into a feeding frenzy?
The parking I find a bit hectic. We were allowed in and there was no sign that it's full. So they should have a little bit better control over that. And then we had to leave without finding a parking half an hour later. And then we left and we found parking upstairs on the roof.
Maybe you're giving the person some space, and then as you have some hazards on, and then the person gets a gap and they just cut you off.
Christmas is only 2 sleeps away and little ones are getting excited, but their parents and loved ones are gritting their teeth for another desperate day of shopping. Morgan Collins, E-News, Durban.
Well, when E-News Primetime continues, for millions the countdown to Christmas has begun, but not for this destitute woman.